Hello, and welcome to the Product Insiders LinkedIn Live series, in which we interview product leaders and learn how they leveraged customer insights to navigate tough product decisions. I'm your host, Zach Lyons, Managing Partner of Agile Innovation Advisors. Now, if you're joining us live today, can you please enter your location in the chat so we know who is with us? And today, our special guest is Brian Knauss, product consultant at Knauss IO. We'll be asking BK, as he prefers to be called, some questions, but if you have any specific questions for him, please enter them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of our discussion. So with that, let's begin. BK, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Zach. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So I'd like to just jump in with my first question. And thinking about a tough product decision you had to navigate, can you please tell us about the role at the time and the situation?
Yeah, I was working at a company. It was a mix of hardware and software. Company had been around for about 10 years, just having some troubles finding real product market fit. But they brought me in as their first product manager, and what they wanted to do is within the space that they were playing then, healthcare was the kind of 800-pound gorilla in terms of the marketplace to go attack. In terms of the TAM, it's just absolutely huge. So they brought me in and start going through during the normal product management fundamentals of, let me go look at the marketplace, look at research papers, let me start talking to customers. And there's also this technology that the company was leveraging on the hardware side that, quite frankly, it had the pathway to be just a market killer. And start going through all these steps. And by golly, yes, healthcare is a humongous 800-pound gorilla. It had over 50% of the marketplace. Everything's there. It's like looking at the competitors and everything. It's like, this is great. Problem is 2021 and supply chain issues on the hardware side meant that this product and the development cycle, instead of being 6 months or a year, is going to be extended quite a bit. So start looking around the company, and instead of just focusing on this one product, start trying to help out with some of the other products and services, and just start finding out that there's not always a lot of connection between what the engineering team is doing and what that commercialization side is going to be, and start uncovering a lot of the more information and playing around with the products and finding a couple different things. Is number one, the company, which is, even though 10 years old, still very much in startup mode and very small team overall, just spread across kind of 10 different products and systems that they're trying to sell. And then also looking at the products that had been launched to market was definitely made for engineers, I would say, but for the end user, not always the best UX experience, especially when things start going wrong. Not everybody knows to power down and power back up. So a lot of big challenges and to overcome, and trying to focus on where to go next.
So you joined this 10-year-old startup, it sounds like, right? They were already sort of in mid-journey, and they had, sounds like a lot of opportunity in front of them, a number of products, hardware products, obviously during the pandemic. You can all remember those supply chain challenges. Even getting PPE was difficult. So, I can imagine prioritizing what to work on, kind of thinking about a challenge. So what did you do? How did you prioritize where to focus, or what challenge to tackle first?
Yeah, I don't think it was hey, here's the set of steps and here's how you go figure it out. It was more of peeling back the layers of the onion as we went. But I think number one challenge was there wasn't a process in place. It was more of Kanban, and not the problem with the engineering team whatsoever, but kind of Kanban going wrong with engineers going, hey, here's what we're going to work on. And there's, again, no connection to the commercialization side of things. So number one was just, for the sanity of everyone, was saying, okay, let's get everything laid out in Jira. Let's understand what needs to be done. Here's all the opportunities. Let's put some prioritization in place. So just the simple stuff like using the RICE formula to say, okay, here's everything we can go do. Let's go figure it out. And again, looking back at, there's a lot of opportunities, I would say, on the product to make it more of a market fit and work better with the end users. And providing that UX aspect. But really, the key item that happened was get to July of 2021, and the CEO goes, "Hey, the fiscal year just started. We should come up with a plan for the financials for the coming year." And kind of a wow for me, but uh, that was a great reset point to go. Okay, we have all these different products. The engineering teams spread way too thin. The sales team spread way too thin. Let's start coming up with a plan on how to go from these kind of 10 different systems that the company is trying to sell down to something much more manageable and focus on that going forward.
So I am curious about something. You're coming in, joining this company. You're sort of an outsider, or at least probably perceived that initially. Was there any pushback from them about some of your suggestions and trying to simplify and focus?
Yes, that's the short answer. And I think it really depended on who you spoke to. I think from the executive level, got a lot of support.
Mm,
Um, One quick story was the company had been using Scrum at a previous point, but the Scrum Master was basically, if you weren't dotting your I's and crossing your T's and following it by the letter of the law, then you get screamed at. So that's part of the reason that the team kind of went to the other side. So it's finding a middle road. It's like we're not going to use the fully baked in Scrum process, but let's find something in the middle that's going to benefit from all different sides and add a level of transparency throughout the company to understand here's what we're working on, here's why we're doing it, here's how it's reaching those goals that we're going for the quarter of the year.
I see. Okay. Yeah, obviously processes are meant to help you, but you don't want to be a prisoner of your process either.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was the overarching challenge? And it was really to simplify, or like what were you trying to decide? And then what did you actually end up start doing?
So we had a few different challenges. I already talked about the supply chain challenge. So there's this great technology, but it's kind of a what do we do for the next 12 months, let's call it, to generate revenue, make sure that the company keeps going. There was also a product that was being worked on, pure software play. So we're getting that profitability. You're seeing more of that subscription model where traditionally the company had just been hardware sales and some profit added on to that, but it's only a one-time kind of revenue generation point. So it all went back to how do we focus? How do we make sure that we're generating that profitable revenue going forward? And what it did was you use the tools that you have in front of you. So made a massive Excel spreadsheet of here are all
Mm,
different products. Here's a rough idea on attainable forecast for sales for the next year. What does the revenue look like? What does the profit look like? And then, very importantly, it was looking at what does that deployment look like? If you need to send somebody physically to a site to do this, that's going to cost a lot more money than hey, here's some stuff and some software, go install it, and it just magically works. So looking at
mm,
that, and then going back to some of the stuff just wasn't really market ready. Understanding what would it take to take any one of those specific products and get it to a market of a valid market stature. Putting all these things together and really coming down to three different products that were these are going to be the key ones that we need to work on. So I talked about that new technology. That was kind of okay. We're not going to attach any revenue to that. We talked about the
mm.
software play, which was already getting some traction in the marketplace, which is fantastic. And then another one, which was using existing products that we already had in house, no supply chain issues. That okay, we can keep that going too. But it took a lot of conversations along the way, not only to go numbers wise, this makes absolute sense, but hey, we had to kill off some babies, and one of those babies happened to be the biggest revenue generator, which was either not giving you any profit or had negative profitability. So lots of really difficult conversations to go to the sales team, especially, and say, hey, that thing that you love selling and sells fairly easily, we need to get rid of it and replace it with something else.
So that is a hard decision. You have a product that's your primary product, and you're deciding to kill it. For people who are listening, other people will face that kind of challenge, right? It's a tough decision. What did you use? Like, what insight did you get, or how did you make that decision?
I think number one was coming to that realization of everybody's looking at the balance sheet and showing, hey,
Mm,
at point of sale, then we're making money. And by golly, compared to all the other products, and it's just blowing all the other products out of the water. but then you need to have some of those conversations about, okay, what are the problems we're seeing with the product? Getting a lot of that customer feedback of here's improvements that are needed, or hey, guess what? The system went down. We don't have like an IT person on staff. This is being sold to restaurants, so you're dealing with sometimes teenagers, and they, unless it's very straightforward on how to fix the problem, it's just going to sit there and not work at all. So uh, putting some numbers behind it with saying, okay, let's look beyond that day one of that sale, and then understand how are we losing money along the way after that. And numbers are never perfect, but coming to the realization of, guess what, this doesn't make sense financially, especially on the profit side. And if we're going to make this kind of this self-running thing that either doesn't stop working or is so simple to get back to the point of working again, there's just going to be a massive engineering resource effort. And we just went, you know what, it doesn't make sense. So from the, again, executive team, very supportive, but going to the sales team and saying, having some of those conversations of, yes, we're going to kill this one, but hey, here's something else that we're going to be selling instead. And here's why it's going to be make your job so much easier. And you're going to be making more of your commission at the end of the day. It's just going to be a little bit of a rough spot for a couple months.
So I'm super curious. Were you looking at like lifetime value of the customer, or was there some metric that you keyed in on, or some insight that you gathered that sort of told you that? I'm just
It was
or
it's kind of
combination.
more straightforward than LTV. It was just more of how many times on average in a month is one of our team members needing to go out into the field and fix this problem. And then you
Uh,
just put some dollars per hour to that and you go, okay, this, extrapolate that over a year. Man, this is not making any sense financially.
so you got this upfront sale, but then this ongoing need for service and support that is, and it sounds like it was on site, so someone actually had to go physically. Okay, so there's an expensive, obviously, way to service a customer, and so it ultimately was not a uh, profitable product. So what did you decide to do? How did you guys pivot to the next thing? Like what led you to, believe that this other area or other product was a better idea to put your eggs behind, put, all your eggs in one basket on that?
A lot of it went back to that initial, hey, day one, I'm coming into a company that's new to me, and an industry that's completely new to me too, a new product space. So going through and doing that market research and talking to the customers, it just gave me a really good basis and foundation to have a point of view, if nothing else, of here are the growth areas, look at the CAGRs, okay, here are the industries that we need to be serving, and getting that validation by having the conversations with the customers of, oh, hey, that sounds great. And the fact that it's so easy to set up and it just kind of does it by itself, and shifting the company to more of that kind of subscription SaaS model instead of that one-time hardware fee. It just seemed to make sense from all the different sides of the marketplace going, everybody's being served. This seems like a great product. We've got some minor validation from the market research, but getting the voice of the customer, yes, we're interested, and how quickly can I get it? You start getting that feeling of, yeah, this is going to be the right thing going forward.
So did you actually do the customer interviews to gather the customer insights, or was that okay? You were doing that personally. You
Some of
were.
that was personal, and then some of that was for anybody that was closer to the customers, just chatting with them, giving them the uh, I'd say the resources to go out and have a conversation about it, but getting a lot of that feedback. So, I mean, it's some of the great things about working at a startup is, I remember, I think it was week number two, probably the biggest customer for the company came into the office. And
Hmm.
number one is, hey, Brian, look through our pitch deck of what we're trying to do, and review that. And you're going to be owning that, which is okay, interesting for my first week, but also to sit down for an entire day with this company and just hear from the horse's mouth of what they're doing, what they're interested in, what direction they're going, and how we can kind of streamline with that and support them going forward.
Oh, that's interesting. Usually you give the advice to entrepreneurs to get outside the building and go talk to customers, but in this case, the customer actually came in the building to talk to you guys. And in those conversations, so obviously having a deep conversation with the biggest customer, but I know there's always a trade-off or a balance, maybe I should say, between sort of serving the needs of a single customer, right, being the sort of customized solution versus selling a product to the market, right, where you're trying to think about collectively the needs of the market and the customers you're targeting. Was there any other insights other than obviously that, them coming in and spending a day with you, which is phenomenal? Was there other insights that sort of triggered you, or if you're talking to other product managers, are there things that they should think about or look for to help them make this kind of decision?
Yeah, I think a challenge, and it's just not myself, and it wasn't this company in particular. I found that in a lot of conversations with other product managers, is especially the sales teams coming in and saying, "Hey, here's our whale of a customer, and they like our product, but we need to add this feature, build something else from the ground up, whatever you want to call it." Um, and quite frankly, this company, the reason they had so many products and systems that they're trying to sell was big company would come in, say, "Hey, here's a big check. We like what you're doing, but we need something pretty much customized just for them, a customized solution." And that's when you didn't have somebody that was stepping back for a second and saying, "That check is big and it solves a lot of financial problems, but let's step back for a second and look at the market fundamentals and go, are we selling this once? Or are we selling this to at scale to a lot of customers?" So that's what led to a few of the problems. But and that customer in particular came in, and I, I think the company was already coming to this conclusion of that company, that customer that came in was asking for more customization, more stuff.
Mm.
Um, but especially with some of the work I was doing, kind of put two and two together to say, we need to very nicely say, this is not the right opportunity. Hey, we have some products. If you're interested, we're willing to do some customization, but not the ground up design that you're asking for. So I think that was one of those key opportunities or those key learnings for the company as a whole is, let's step back for a second. Let's gauge this and see, what does that TAM look like just for that particular product, instead of saying, here's this one opportunity, let's go get the cash as quickly as possible.
Right. Yeah, that's never an easy thing, but having a strategy and understanding the market is kind of stepping back, right, from a single customer telling you to go build something. So what happened? What was the result of your your insights and working with the company?
So I think the easiest way to put this as a headline is, sometimes the best decisions for a company and the business definitely do not reflect the best path forward, or not the best situation for you. So we narrowed it down to really these three products, and we keep moving ahead. Additional supply chain issues, so that new technology in the future keeps getting pushed back, pushed back. Seeing some traction with that, kind of leveraging the old product in a new way. But the software, this new software product, that was seeing a lot more traction with a very large name customer. Very, very long story short is, I get a call from my boss one day, "Hey, Brian, we're letting you go." And then in short
Mm.
order, so it's a multinational company, headquartered outside of the US, but the entire US branch had been cut off. And really the hardware side was totally divested for the company. And they are 100% focused on the software side. So a lot of those conversations, tough conversations, especially with the executive team, of, we need to be focusing on software. We need to be focusing on profitability. I think that led them in the right direction. So I lost a job, and many other great people lost their jobs too. But I think if you go back to, was it the right decision for the company to stay afloat and stay profitable in very difficult times, especially in that hardware sector? I think that was the best path forward. But again, just not always the best news to get a call and say, "Hey, guess what? You need to look for a new job."
Right. That's interesting. So your input and your prodding and your approach to the leadership team ended up them making a decision to cut the U.S. Arm of the business off. You and along with other folks then kind of got into and you weren't involved. You weren't involved with the decision directly, though. It doesn't
No,
sound
no, I did. I
like.
had no clue that was going to happen.
Mm.
But it's the fun of working with startups. Of, after a while, it's just, okay. I got the news. It sucks, but you move on and onto a different challenge in front of you.
So this is actually an interesting. The outcome wasn't obviously positive for you personally, but uh, you think about this experience. What would you do differently if you could go through this again? If you had another opportunity like this, how would you approach it?
It's something I've learned over the years is, and I think a lot of companies have this in their values, is don't be afraid to step on toes. And even though a job description says one thing, or hey, you might be pushed into a certain area,
Hmm.
feel free to jump, poke your head up a little bit and see what's going on around you, and look for those opportunities. I think, especially in smaller companies, it's easier to look around and see all those inputs into the company and how things are working. Um, don't be afraid to step on toes. If you have an opinion, if you have something in the back of your head, it's better to voice that. Voice it in a constructive way. Don't be a jerk about it, but it's better to identify, or at least voice something of, hey, there might be a problem. We should look into this more and see, is it truly a problem, or is it okay? We did the research, everything's good. Let's keep moving forward. But again, I don't necessarily think I would fundamentally change anything I did. But to have a stronger voice earlier on might have changed the direction a little bit. But at the end of the day, it might have been the same outcome for the company. And either way, I think they're in a better place right now.
That's an interesting perspective in learning. Some folks, have sort of a good something they're good at. Most people have something they're good at, and they sort of feel like if they put their head down, right, and work hard and kind of do what they're good at, they'll make progress and eventually get rewarded. You're kind of saying, hey, okay, but if you don't put your head up and look around and see what's going on, that's bad too. So there's a balance there. Any advice for people who say that's not really who I am? I'm not comfortable doing that.
Oh, so even though I'm, speaking in front of you and however many other people are watching right now, I am, and my wife will definitely tell you, I am by nature very much an introvert. So I can turn it on for short bursts of time. I can go and do a sales presentation. It feels great during that time, but man, I need to go into a corner and just have my quiet time after that, and that's how I recharge. So I think it's more of a learning, and especially coming from the engineering side of things and working at companies where you go into your cube, you go behind your computer, and that's where you sit.
Yeah.
I learned over the years it feels worse when you go, "Hey, I should have said something," versus, um, I don't. I definitely don't remember times of speaking up and feeling so badly about that.
Oh, that's great. That's a really interesting. Yeah. So you regret the times you don't speak up more than you
Yes.
probably, even though that might be uncomfortable to say something out of your comfort zone for a little bit. That's short lived, it sounds like, but the regret can live much longer. So that's actually great advice. And I'm curious. This is a fascinating story. I'm curious if anyone else out there has any questions for BK. I know there's a slight delay, so if you have a question, want to enter them in the chat. This is a good time to do it. And obviously, always learning from folks. And I appreciate, BK, your lesson here. Uh, and I hope everyone else actually took away at least one thing. For me, right, that don't regret speaking up. You need to do that, right, because ultimately, even if the outcome's not good for you, it might be the best for the business. And eventually, obviously, you landed on your feet, right? So you're doing fine. So even though no one wants to get terminated from a job, who knows? Sometimes that leads to better outcomes. I will say, if there aren't any questions, I'm looking. I know it's quiet in the summer. We can continue the conversation and the discussion in LinkedIn. Obviously, it becomes a post. People can enter their questions in the chat, and we can continue doing that if there aren't any questions from our audience live. So I will say, for folks, as we're waiting, if any questions do come in, that we will have more product insiders here on LinkedIn. Coming. We have a couple more coming in the summer. Oh, we do have a question. So I will jump to that from Paul. Paul says, any software tools you use for decision-making process? Good question.
So the company I've been speaking about, very limited in terms, and I found this a lot of startups, is you're going to be limited in terms of those software tools. So I think I briefly mentioned just having a massive Excel spreadsheet with all the numbers and making those, what came down to sort of financial decisions. So I've been at multiple startups where you don't have anything fancy, and that's what you got to use. But working at some bigger companies too, then you have, I'd say, anything that gives you metrics that help build that story of, um, yeah, and they're data points, but building that story of here's what we should be doing, and here's all the reasons why. I don't think there's any specific software tools I would say this is the one that I use, and it's the silver bullet. It's using a number of different tools, giving you that information, giving you those data points, and that further supporting whatever your thesis is.
Well, maybe even adding on to Paul's question, was there specific data, like, kind of, I refer to it as there's data you can go generate where you interview customers, for example, and get insights, so customer insights. And then there's, I call it operational data that just happens as a result of products being sold, right? That you can gather. Was there any specific data that was to you was key? Was it both, combining it, in some way to help you kind of get that insight?
Yeah, and I guess the other way to flip it around is I never, and I don't think any product manager should look at one data point and say we're going to make a decision just based off of that. So I think it was a lot of using that market research information and looking at those numbers to help guide. Here's the general correct direction to move forward, but it is going through and having that validation again. And sometimes it is. And again, I'm an engineer by heart, and by originally what I did as a professional. But sometimes you need to go through and get some of that subjective information. And there's something about either being on a video call with a customer and seeing that expression in their face, or if you can be face to face. There's a lot that you can gather from that you will never be able to see from all the numbers you can have in the world. So, especially when you're trying to validate things like pricing, or hey, what's your willingness to buy this product?
So true. Having that face-to-face interaction, even if it's qualitative, right, is such a eye opener. I almost would recommend bringing along engineers, right, who are helping build it. At least, not maybe not the whole team, but at least some of them, so they can actually see the customer face to face and understand how customers react. But yes, there's nothing better than getting that interaction with the customer, and not just the one that comes into the building, but the other ones that are out there as well, right?
Yeah.
So good question, Paul. And so with that, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I will say, stay tuned again for our next Product Insiders on LinkedIn. It will be on August 2nd. And until then, if you need help leveraging customer insights to navigate a tough product decision, please feel free to message me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to chat. So until next time, I'm your host, Zach Lyons with Agile Innovation Advisors, and take care, everyone. And thank you so much, BK.
Thank you, Zach.